Hello and welcome to American Friction, the US politics podcast that is desperate to have its own fan fiction, if anybody fancies writing it. I'm Jacob Jarvis, and I've been thinking of writing a Star Wars universe zombie survival screenplay with vampires.
That sounds sick. And I'm Chris Jones, and my dream fanfiction would be Chip Shop Diva replacing Frodo in a reimagined version of Lord of the Rings called Lord of the Onion Rings TM.
And joining us today is Nikki McCann Ramirez. What fanfiction have you been reading lately, Nikki?
I'm not telling you.
Tell us.
You thought you were... What? Did you think you were going to trick me?
Yeah, we did.
Did you think I would just not...
I thought it might dupe you.
I am undupable. I am not a member of Donald Trump's intelligence community. I am untrickable.
That would be so good if I got in Nikki's fanfiction group chat by accident.
Yeah.
Let's work that out.
We'll
try and make that happen. We'll try and make that happen.
It could happen. But anyway, on to this show. We are going to be talking about, of course, the fallout from the Pete Hegseth Signal group drama and how that's left MAGA on the back foot, and also how the Democrats have, they're seeming to get a little bit angry about it, and that might be good for them. But before that, Chris, it is that time of the week.
Oh, no.
Let's get silly. We're doing jingles on today's show, so it's Chris's silly question time.
No, do it in a jingle.
It's Chris's silly question time.
Nice. Simon, put some boots and cats on that. That's what they say, isn't it? Some beatboxing.
Yeah, I'm sure they do. It's Chris's silly question time.
On the, I guess, the theme of the week so far, let's go with some group chat. Some group chat. What's the most awkward group chat moment you've had?
I once wrote in a group chat that I was like, let's not invite X person.
Oh, say his name, you coward.
No. And then they were in the group chat, and then I had to play. This makes me sound really mean. I'm not really mean, guys. I just, there were reasons. And then I just had to play it out that it was like a really drawn out bit, because they replied, they were like, not invite me to what? And I was like, well, you'll have to see. Ha ha ha. Not really. Of course you invited, my man.
And were they accidentally invited into this group chat?
No,
because it's actually quite hard to accidentally invite someone into a group chat.
It is quite difficult. So I had that, and then the other one that I'm constantly paranoid about is I'm quite vain, as you all know, and so I'll take pictures of myself sort of after I've been at the gym, like little progress photos.
Like little spicy gym pics.
Yeah, and I always
You're
worry.
one of those?
Yeah,
is one of those.
But I always really worry when I'm sending someone like a meme. Very often I'll it'll be a photo of me that I wouldn't like to send into the group chat.
Jarv, you just got to start putting those in your hidden folder.
Yeah, I don't know how that works. I'm too old for that, but there must be a way. But yeah, that's my biggest group chat fear at the moment. Nikki, what about you?
Fear or most awkward moment?
Most awkward moment, then fear. Let's do it that way.
I know exactly what the most awkward moment I've ever experienced in a group
say it
chat
then.
is. The problem is it involves several prominent media people.
Redact the names.
Yeah, there's a journalist who I have been in several group chats where they are present, and they unavoidably, within a year of being added to the chat, start an argument with someone that absolutely kills the chat, and then we need to make a new one without them.
Oh.
And it's just like, it's awkward every time, and then sometimes it happens that they'll be out of the chat and then I get added to another chat with a semi-different configuration of people. And then a year later, that journalist causes a problem again. One day when they inevitably fall from grace, I will say the name. But until then. And then my biggest group chat fear, fear is when I'm talking shit about someone to someone else, because they're annoying me or something, and I'm taking screenshots of the conversation. My biggest fear is accidentally sending the screenshot back to the person I'm screenshotting. That's my biggest fear.
That's always a horror, Chris.
Well, my biggest fear is actually the thing that happened, and I'll redact the names. Yeah. It was and it's not a group chat actually. This is just a message. I don't have many group chats because I've not got many friends.
We'll add you to some. I'm in too many. Replace me in
you
some
never know.
of mine.
Someone might accidentally add me to a group chat because it gets sucked in. Anyway, my That was a reference to what Mike Waltz said, by the way, in case you hadn't. I expected you to smile at least, Jarv, because that was quite funny.
It was good.
Basically, I messaged one of our freelance contributors at Podmasters, won't say who, name redacted, and that message was supposed to go to my girlfriend.
Okay.
And in that message, I used a pet name for my girlfriend. And I didn't notice until the person replied. And that was a terrible moment for me. I'm on the edge of tears right now.
What was the...
I'm not saying.
Come on.
No.
Christopher, I understand that we're very good friends, but this is completely inappropriate for a workplace situation.
What was
I'm
the
not
pet
saying.
name?
I'm not saying.
Got a clue?
No, it wasn't. No.
A clue?
No, I'm not saying.
Was it like a comedy pet name? Was it a really romantic pet name?
No, it was neither. It was just a funny pet name. It was just a pet name. I wish it hadn't have happened, but it did. Anyway, I'm glad we've wrapped that up. Welcome back. You're listening to American Friction.
Segment over.
Before we begin then, as you know, we love making the show and we really love that you all love listening to it, but we would really appreciate it if you could find it in your hearts, your lovely hearts, as you all have, to support us on Patreon, if you could.
For just £3 a month, which is actually less than a coffee in London these days, it's madness. You'll get the show ad-free, and other tiers get you access to bonus content and merch, which is well good and cool and nice and also very cool. And if you sign up for £5 a month or more, we have a Patreon chat community where you can ask questions to us and other listeners to the show so that we can talk through the madness going on in US politics together, which is nice and cool and good.
So what are you waiting for? Follow the link in the show notes or go to patreon.com/American Friction to sign up. Chris, I've got to say, you sounded more northern than ever there when you were like,
did I?
Coffee in London.
London.
In London. They've got expensive coffee in London.
Yeah.
They really do.
They do.
Nikki, watching the Hegseth Signal scandal play out, it's been pretty wild. How have you felt?
Amazing. Amazing. Like, look, I think there's a reason that people are fixated on this story and that the story is getting so much traction, even amongst just like the cornucopia of shit that's currently taking place. And it's because it feels, for the first time since Trump was inaugurated, even probably from during the campaign, that Republicans are on defense.
Yeah.
That Republicans are having to defend their position, that like Democrats and the critics of Republicans have the upper hand in the conversation and have the ability to really exact, even if it's just like public humiliation from members of the Trump administration as a form of punishment.
Yeah.
I think that's why people are so into this story, why this story is so big. And to be clear, it is kind of a big deal. Like, this is the kind of thing that gets people fired when they're run-of-the-mill members of the military or the intelligence community. A couple years ago, there was this, I believe he was in the Army or the Navy. He was some guy in the military who took some classified documents about the war in Ukraine and posted them on a Discord server. He got 15 years in prison for that. Like, it's a big deal. And I think what it really showed is that these people are kind of what we thought they were. They're buffoons. They're former Fox News hosts. They're people who don't have the experience and the training and the savvy, even just the self-preservation instinct to, when they are added to a Signal chat, recognize that, number one, they're not supposed to be talking about these things on Signal. And number two, check who's in the chat and read the room. It's like, oh, like the first thing they should have done is ask everyone, like, hey, can you just like state your name? And if someone doesn't, be like, hey, why hasn't this person said who they are? Who is that person? Especially if you're supposed to be the head of the intelligence community, the director of the CIA, the like Secretary of Defense. These aren't like, ooh, it's my first day on the job, I don't know what I'm doing. These are positions that are like critical to national security, and you should know better.
The other thing being, I suppose, as well, even if there wasn't a journalist in there, you'd hope that they'd check who was in the chat, because politically, people are going to be out to get each other at some point from the MAGA world. You would imagine that you would check just to make sure, is there anyone in here who might be potentially not an ally to me, just in my own in my own remit of what I want to achieve in the future. That just seems, just for self-preservation, check who's in your group chats, really. Is it kind of an example, I suppose, of the only people who can beat Trump and MAGA are Trump and MAGA themselves? Or is that a little bit of a pipe dream that we think they're going to trip themselves up so much that it eventually fucks up for them?
I think that is a little bit of a pipe dream. I think this administration has established that they don't really give a shit what their critics say. They don't really care about the backlash.
Yeah.
You can already see in the way the White House is reacting to this scandal, for lack of a better word, is by blaming Jeffrey Goldberg, and, disseminating conspiracy theories about how he got added into the chat and quibbling about the definition of war plans. It's like, okay, you sent a text message including the times of airstrikes and what planes and weapon systems were going to be used in those airstrikes. Oh, yeah, but they didn't say locations. It's like, yeah, they didn't say locations, but you can bet your ass if the Houthis had seen those texts, they would kind of know what locations might be targeted.
Who is Mike Waltz then? He's kind of taken the blame for it. He's been the fall guy, but he's still in post as far as I'm aware there.
Yeah.
Has he taken the heat off of Hegseth, really? Or has he just folded himself into being like, well, I look stupid, and then proven the fact that you can be a complete arsehole in this administration and you won't get fired anyway?
I mean, taking the heat, he's like, yeah, we made a mistake. We didn't mean to do that. He's like, oh, we'll get to the bottom of it. It's like, well, it's not that hard to get to the bottom of it. You added a journalist into a group chat, accidentally or otherwise. And then the Secretary of Defense sent attack plans, we're going to be specific about our language,
of course,
into that chat. And, I mean, Mike Waltz, sorry, I didn't say who he was, actually. He's Trump's national security advisor. He's former Army Special Forces. He's a former member of the House of Representatives. Like, he fucked up big time in this instance. And while I think the bigger breach of intelligence here probably came from Hegseth, because, the Department of Defense, some of the intelligence agencies have said, okay, Signal's okay for like casual chats with friends, but you're not supposed to be using it to like transmit classified information or plan military actions against other nations. I think like a couple weeks before this happened, I believe it was the Department of Defense issued a warning about how like American adversaries were trying to exploit vulnerabilities in Signal's code, because Signal is an open source app. And the idea is that the code is out there so that people can identify vulnerabilities and like potential security issues. But at the same time, the code is there for people who might want to exploit those security issues. And some of these people were traveling internationally. I believe Waltz was actually in Russia when he made the chat. And these people are so high level that they usually have a security detail with them that is capable of setting up a secure communication line, or like a skiff that they can use to communicate securely no matter where they are. So Waltz, in this instance, there was no reason to use Signal to make this chat. There were plenty of other ways you could have gone about doing it. He could have made the chat, asked all like the individuals in it, like who their representative was, because that was the original purpose of the chat, was basically like, oh, who should we be talking to from your office? Once he got the list of names, been like, okay, TY, I'm closing the chat. They didn't need to sit there and debate the merits of bombing Yemen. Hegseth didn't need to go in and be like, hey guys, here's the bomb plans, here's the timeline, here's the airplanes we're going to be using. Like, that didn't need to happen. And I don't think it's entirely accurate to say that the heat has been taken off of Hegseth. Hegseth has been taking plenty of shit for this.
Yeah.
Because his name is super recognizable. And while Walsh had the initial fuck up of adding Goldberg to the chat, Hegseth's fuck up compounded the situation immensely. And I would not be surprised if there's some sort of like public reprimand from Republicans. I don't think either of them will end up resigning.
With Hegseth, he's a military man, and I'm not a military man. I know, but I'm even less of a military man than him, I suppose. But I thought their whole shit was like chain of command. So if he respects that, surely as well, the book does just have to stop with him, even if he hadn't put the things in, even if someone else in that chat had put the things in, surely he's the person who should take the kind of ultimate responsibility there, shouldn't he? He is kind of the most senior person involved, right?
I don't know if he's the most senior. Like, they're all pretty up there.
Yeah.
Also, one of the really interesting things about that chat that I don't think is getting talked about enough, speaking of like seniority, is the fact that Stephen Miller just kind of popped in, and when they were discussing, JD Vance was saying that, I don't know if the rationale is right now. It kind of contradicts the president's message on Europe. What if we waited a month? And then Hegseth tried to argue the opposite point. Stephen Miller came in and just kind of shut down the conversation. Was like, the president was clear. It was like, he's giving the green light on this. And so I don't think it's getting talked about enough in the context of like the broader scandal. But the fact that Stephen Miller is basically speaking as an authority for the president and can shut down a conversation like that amongst his like highest level advisors, that points to a really interesting dynamic. That says a lot about the authority and the sway that Miller has in the Trump administration right now. But the famous photo of Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton and a bunch of members of the Obama cabinet sitting in the Situation Room and watching Osama bin Laden get killed?
Yeah.
Yeah. The Situation Room is like, it's the fancy room where they go into to watch live events, particularly military events, but it's also highly secured. Is like, from what I understand, deep underground, lead lined. There are no like satellite or wireless communications. All feeds have to be patched in on like landlines, like cabled feeds. And it exists because they need a space that is so secure that probably the only way you can find out what's going on in there is if you had a person inside the room.
Yeah.
That's the kind of protocol that the United States typically follows for military operations, covert military operations. So for Hegseth to jump into a group chat and be like, hey, guys, an unsecure group chat, be like, hey, guys, here's all the things, not knowing who was in that chat, because no matter what they say, they thought they were talking just to people in the administration when they were actually all talking to a journalist. That just speaks to a level of incompetence that is almost unheard of within a presidential administration.
Well, it's like Ben Mako, who we spoke to the other day, was saying how Vladimir Putin, his Situation Room is something like 9 stories below the ground. So, as you say, you'd have to have a physical person in there. So, I don't think I'd say this on the podcast today, but you got to give it to Vladimir Putin on that, and you can't give it to Pete Hegseth.
You can't.
Yeah, 1 Putin, Pete Hegseth 0.
Yeah,
in that matchup.
Absolutely.
Chris, watching from afar. What have you made of this situation, and what comments surrounding it have stood out to you?
Well, actually, the thing that stood out to me most recently was what Nikki touched on a second ago there. It was this memo that was released by the Pentagon that NPR got access to. They obtained it on 18th of March, and I'll read what some of that memo says. It says, a vulnerability has been identified in the Signal messenger application. Russian professional hacking groups are employing the linked devices features to spy on encrypted conversations. And then it says, please note, third-party messaging apps, e.g. Signal, are permitted by policy for unclassified accountability/recall exercises, but are not approved to process or store non-public, unclassified information, which tells me that they should never have been using Signal. I mean, we know that already, but it seems like someone had already had the forethought that let's probably not use apps like this.
Well, it reminds me of I remember around COVID when people were first working from home and stuff like that, and hearing horror stories of people finding themselves in trouble with their bosses, or I know of some people, stories of people being fired because they had sent information from their workplace to a personal email address in order to be able to then work from home.
Yeah.
And you think that's just for complete sort of civilian issues. You just know that there are certain things in your workplace that you couldn't just send elsewhere.
It's such a crazy thing to have happened, especially when you consider that, yes, different administration, but TikTok, for example, was banned on all federally issued mobile phones for federal employees. So there is acknowledgement in there that apps such as TikTok, I know Signal is US owned, but it still has the same, functionality and ability to be hacked. As Ben McHugh said, it's off the shelf. You can literally just download it. But they know that these types of apps are targeted and can be targeted. So why even go there? No. Why take the risk? That's what I don't understand. Why take the risk of having this incredibly sensitive information there on an app where, as Nikki says, conversations like this should take place in areas such as dead rooms or confidential
skiff.
Areas. Or a skiff.
Yeah.
Give the federal employees their memes back. That's what I say. Let them get TikTok again. If anything goes, give them their doom scroll. Let them meme.
Let them meme. The other thing that stood out to me is, again, something that Nikki mentioned. It's like she's inside my brain sometimes. It's weird.
She is.
I live in the walls.
Yeah. Oh, no, that's not good.
Crawling.
But I didn't like that at all. For listeners, he did a weird finger movement towards me, and I didn't enjoy it.
Crawling.
He's done it again. But serious, the attacks on Jeff Goldberg. I said serious.
I don't know. You can't just say.
I can.
But serious. All right, no, but serious.
I mean, look, I have opinions about Jeff Goldberg. We can get into that.
Sure. But I would say any one of us would probably have done what he done what he did.
Absolutely.
This is such a serious breach. There's no way it can just go under the radar, unreported. Because, I mean, one, how are they going to learn? Because they're clearly so inept. They need to have lessons like this. But also, the fact that they have almost turned this into a conspiracy as to how Goldberg got into that group chat is unforgivable. And it just shows the mentality of the yes men, the yes people that surround Trump at the moment.
Yeah.
Why are you laughing again?
Yes people is good.
I want it to be inclusive.
No, I appreciate it.
That's right.
That's the end of my point. You ruined it.
Yeah. But, I mean, on Jeff Goldberg as well, it's not like he dumped all the info straight away.
Yeah, exactly.
He did redact info and say it, and then they all came out and said he's lying, to which he then just went, well, I've literally got the receipts.
Well, it wasn't that they said he was lying. It's that they kept insisting that the information wasn't classified.
Yeah.
Which is, I wouldn't take their word for it because pretty much every national security expert outside of the people involved in this situation who I've seen been interviewed by media outlets has said, no, this kind of information is absolutely classified. But Goldberg, he can shield himself in two ways. One, he can say, hey, they added me to the group chat. I didn't hack this information. I didn't receive it from someone who hacked into whatever system this was. They delivered it to me. And releasing classified information as a journalist, there's a bunch of laws in the United States against that. But there are some carve-outs about if you obtain classified information in a certain way in which you, the journalist, did not break the law, you could probably release it. So I think that, plus the president, Tulsi Gabbard, Ratcliffe, all saying, oh, no, there was no classified information in this, Well, even if it turns out it was classified, which by all likelihood it seems that it was, Goldberg can just say, hey, I was just taking the word of the president who said this wasn't classified. So what's stopping me from releasing it?
Yeah. That pesky president.
Yeah, but I think there's a reason that Goldberg was in Waltz's phone.
Yeah, give us some more of your Jeff Goldberg goss that you've got.
I mean, it's not gossip. It's very well known. He was one of the most prominent advocates, media advocates for the invasion of Iraq. He's been staunchly pro-Israel for the majority of his career, especially throughout this war. But he's one of those guys that Republicans kind of like to leak to. Because he does ride that centrist rail, or purports to ride that centrist rail. So it's not surprising to me that Waltz had his phone number. In terms of people who could have been added to this group chat, Goldberg was probably one of the least harmful to Republicans. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Because me and a lot of other journalists I know would have, I would have stayed in that chat for weeks, months. I would have waited a solid 2 months before, after they stopped talking to exit the chat.
Imagine if it was Bob Woodward in the chat. He would be in there for 20 years.
Yeah.
Until he
and then he'd publish a book about it.
Exactly. So it could have gone that way. Has this all then, we've been down on the Democrats a little bit of late. Has this energized them a little bit? Have they got finally a little bit of traction to push back on?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, the hearings that have been happening this week have been so spicy. It coincidentally happened that the day after The Atlantic published its article, the Senate Intelligence Committee was holding a hearing on the 2025 Global Threats Report, which is a giant report produced by the intelligence community every year, which basically gives Congress a readout on what the intelligence community's priorities are, what they see as the biggest threats to national security. And instead of talking about the report, there was some talk about the report. The hearing, which included Tulsi Gabbard, who's the director of national intelligence, and John Ratcliffe, who's the director of the CIA. Kash Patel was also there, but he didn't really matter in the context of what happened. He wasn't in the chat. It was just 2 hours of Democrats reaming out Gabbard and Ratcliffe for being incompetent, for putting the lives of American service members at risk, for, potentially perjuring themselves because they were testifying under oath before Congress. And at one point, Senator John Ossoff, the junior senator from Georgia, told them, we're gonna get these texts. And when we do, your answers today will be measured carefully against their content. And it's, like I said earlier, this is the first time in the first 2 months of the Trump administration where it feels like Democrats are on the attack, where it feels like Democrats have grabbed the bone and are not letting it go. Whereas previously on the shit show that is this nation, it's been a lot of, oh, Trump did this, we need to challenge it in the court. Oh, Congress is doing this. Chuck Schumer threw in the towel for no reason. And this one really feels like they've got a stranglehold on it and they're not letting go. And I understand, I will say, I have heard from some people who seem frustrated. It's all these bad things are happening. Why focus on this? And I mean, my answer to that is because it was a really easy fuck up. It was a fuck up that was handed to Democrats on a silver platter, and you have to eat off that plate as long as you can.
On that, Nikki, I suppose why this is quite an easy attack line is the whole patriotism dynamic just a really big thing here to catch on, because it just seems to me what they've done is potentially put US soldiers at risk, and that's that's rule 101, it feels like to me, as an American, don't disrespect soldiers. But then also, Pete Hegseth, being in that role, already seemed overinflated for that position. Yeah. All of these actions just seem to me like Trump saying, we love our troops. And it's well, you fucking don't, do you? You've put an absolute clown in charge of it, and he's got no respect for any of it either. So is that the sort of the unifying, why there's kind of cross consensus across the political spectrum on this is because, you can't fuck with the troops, basically.
Yeah, putting American troops in danger is like top 3 worst things you can do as a president or elected lawmaker. And also, it doesn't help that this happens. There's this whole conversation about like endangering the troops, and 4 American soldiers are, as of yesterday, like missing in Lithuania.
Oh,
and
no.
they haven't found them. And Trump was asked about it during an Oval Office meeting. And he was like, oh, this is the first I'm hearing about this. Like, the president should not be learning that soldiers under his command, because he is the commander in chief, are missing from a member of the press. That is something that your cabinet should have informed you about before you got on camera. So the level of incompetence cannot be overstated.
With Trump and how he must be feeling on this has made him personally look very stupid. And we've seen his press secretary coming out and making themselves look very stupid. This has just made a lot of people look idiotic here. How much patience for that do you think that Trump is going to have? Because that's what I'm also not understanding, him standing by Hegseth here, when it feels to me his own personal brand and his own personal cleverness, however he wants to describe it, is very important to him. So what's the sense there of how furious he is about it? And just how many people has this made look like fucking idiots?
Many people look like idiots right now. Many people have egg on their faces, and eggs are really expensive right now.
Nice.
But it's hard to remember these days, but people need to really flash back to the beginning of the first Trump administration, which was an absolute clusterfuck of scandal after scandal after scandal, of Trump administration officials saying a stupid thing. The amount of turnover in Trump's like senior counsel cabinet during the first administration was insane. It was especially like with press secretaries. He went through so many press secretaries. All of them were embarrassing. Trump hates it when the people he surrounds himself with make him look like a buffoon.
Yeah.
He can't stand it. And it's one of the things that we've talked about with Elon Musk is I think a lot of people are holding out for the moment that Elon Musk messes up so badly that the Trump administration has no recourse other than to cut ties with him. And it's kind of the same thing in his cabinet. He does kind of treat his cabinet and his advisors as like an apprentice style ring show where he's the ringmaster. And if you mess up, if you get on his bad side, you're out. So, and I think it was really noticeable during the hearings with Gabbard and Ratcliffe, where Ratcliffe seemed like, honest to God, humiliated. He was angry. He was like quibbling with members of the committee. Gabbard was just throwing Hegseth under the bus the entire time. They would ask her questions and she would just be like, oh, I'm going to defer that to the Secretary of Defense and the National Security Council. Oh, I'm not answering that. You'll need to go talk to the Secretary of Defense. You're seeing, even among the people who are coming out dirty from this incident, they're kind of trying to shove other people in front of them in the line of fire. And so, if I think anyone was going to take the hit, it would probably be Walz. We've seen some chatter from administration officials saying that no one actually liked Mike Waltz and that he should have been out before he even got in. I don't think Hegseth is on the chopping block just yet. I don't think anyone really is, but if it's going to be someone, I think it'll be Waltz.
On to some wider news on Trump this week then as well. It's been quite the week of destruction. What's going on with the Department of Education for the uninformed such as myself?
Apparently we're getting rid of it.
So it's just going. And what does that...
No.
Yeah.
Yes
what does
and
that
no.
mean practically? Because education is handled largely at state level a lot across the US, isn't it? So what would that mean in practicality?
So the Department of Education's actual function is really misunderstood. Republicans like to talk a lot about how, the Department of Education is like indoctrinating your children with trans and woke ideology, and they promote DEI. That's not really the case. curriculums, by and large, are developed at the state level by school boards, by the Department of Education of individual states. That's why Florida can get away with all the shit it's been doing to education. The federal Department of Education primarily exists for two functions. One, enforcing civil rights, ensuring that no matter what state you're in, you as a student, if you have a disability, if you're a minority, if you're a woman, have equal access to educational opportunities. Their second function, and honestly these days probably the primary function, is the distribution of loans and grants. So federal student loans, Pell grants, federal funding for states to, keep programs that help disabled students, poor families, minority students access education systems that they might not normally have access to. Those are the two primary functions of the federal Department of Education. It's actually one of the smallest departments of all the cabinet level departments. Things that are happening here. So in order to be, we've talked about this before, but in order to be a capital D executive department, you need to be created by an act of Congress. So the Department of Defense, the Department of Education, the Department of Transportation, Housing and Urban Development, those are all created and sanctioned by Congress. There are laws saying these things exist. They can also only be dissolved by an act of Congress. So Trump can't just sign the executive order like he did and, the Department of Education disappears. That's not how it works. What he can do is sign an executive order directing Education Secretary Linda McMahon, wife of WWE founder and CEO Vince McMahon. I'm not kidding. She's a wrestler. Yeah. She's been suplexed on television. Direct her to essentially make the department as useless as possible. And then theoretically, Trump can also ask congressional Republicans to eliminate it, but it would be really hard for it to overcome the filibuster in the Senate. So what's been announced is that they're going to fire a bunch of staff and they're going to redistribute all of the programs and funding that the department handles to other executive departments.
Maybe they should make Linda McMahon and Pete Hegseth just switch job. Because he's unintentionally just trying to destroy his department, and she knows shit about fighting.
I wonder where you were going with that.
So, WrestleMania Army Edition. Let's go.
WrestleMania Army
Let's see how it goes. Brock Lesnar running everything. I don't know. Hey.
Carlito.
Gold
nice. Dust.
Yeah, gold dust.
I could go on.
The push against the judiciary that we're seeing as well, Nikki. What is it they're trying to stop judges from being able to do? What's happening there?
They basically want to intimidate judges into complying or simply not ruling against Trump. That's really it. They're basically saying, if we don't like the decisions coming out of your courtroom, we're going to try and impeach you. And Supreme Court Chief Justice John Roberts, who's a conservative, came out last week, I think, and essentially told Republicans impeachment is not a solution to rulings that you don't like. That's why we have the appeals process. But, the Trump administration has been doing a lot of things that are A, outright illegal, or B, test laws that haven't been applied in more than a century and a half, or were not written to do the things they are trying to do, like the Alien Enemies Act, the Immigration and Nationality Act. So you have these judges who are being presented with cases where there's not a lot of precedent about the laws being used in that way. For example, Trump trying to invoke the Alien and Enemies Act to deport Venezuelan migrants to a prison in El Salvador without a trial, hearing, or due process is a wild thing. And so judges are basically saying no. This is a really weird and novel interpretation of the law. You're going to stop what you're doing until we get a chance to review this.
Sure.
And the Trump administration doesn't like that. They don't like that. They think they should be able to do whatever they want. Trump thinks that because he installed a bunch of judges into the federal courts, 3 justices into the Supreme Court, that all those judges should be gratuitous to him and inherently rule on his side because he's the person who appointed him. That's not the case. And there are very shitty judges in this country. But if there's one thing, people in power are never going to willingly give up that power, at least knowingly give up that power voluntarily. The judiciary understands that they are really powerful. And they're just not going to step aside and be like, yes, Mr. President, make us obsolete. That's not something that I think any federal judge is about to do. So, yes, they're trying. They're threatening to impeach judges. And I think Republicans have submitted 4 impeachment resolutions against district judges. The other thing we've heard is that Republican leadership in the House is like, this is a bad idea. This is not only a waste of our time that's not going to go anywhere, but it's going to play really poorly with the general public. In a situation where Trump and Republicans' approval ratings are already declining, and they're walking a really precarious rope.
Chris, finally on this little section then, we don't do Chris's poll corner anymore, but I want to bring it back a little bit, jingle time for you. So he's here with the numbers. Yes, he's got them all. I'm talking about
He's
Chris.
got the numbers.
Let's have all the polls. So, Chris.
Oh my God, that was terrible.
I want
I can
all
sing
the
them all.
polls,
All the
every single
polls.
one.
Yeah, so Chris, how's America feeling about some of these issues?
Well, I've only got one poll for you here,
Oh,
so
Chris.
not all the polls. And it's back to the Department of Education we go. There was a survey conducted of over 1,000 people by Data for Progress on behalf of Student Borrower Protection Center and Groundwork Collaborative. Say that in one breath. That polling found that 61% either somewhat or strongly oppose abolishing the Department of Education, compared to 34% in support of getting rid of it. Every age demographic in that polling mostly disapproves of demolishing it. So basically everyone, doesn't want it to be abolished. There's also been some pushback on the whole chat around the Department of Education, Trump's plan for it, especially from teachers' unions. And there was one statement that stood out for me from the president of the American Federation of Teachers, Randy Weingarten. I've probably got that wrong.
Nice.
Definitely
No,
have.
you're right.
Good name.
I've got it right. Get in
Yeah.
the back of the net. She released a statement which simply said, "See you in court."
Oh, okay. Well, you're polling my leg.
Stop. Stop. End it there. That's awful.
On to some more stories that you might have missed then. So, Nikki, how would you describe the recent portrait painting of one Donald J. Trump?
I honestly didn't think it was that bad. I think his cheeks are a little puffier
Yeah.
than they normally are. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought it looked decently like him.
I kind of think it looks like, all the memes that are going around of J.D. Vance at the moment, where
Yes.
they're blowing his face up. It kind of looks like someone did that to Trump and then painted it.
I've not seen
Yeah.
it.
It looks like
I'm
him, but
searching
with
for it
just a
now.
puffier face, really.
Yeah, his
He looks
face looks
younger.
puffy.
His skin looks better in it than what it
What
is.
the fuck is that?
I mean, it's not. I don't think it's good. I'm not gonna. I'm not gonna say it's
terrible.
good.
No, I don't think it's great, but I also don't think it was like, he was like, oh, this was like purposefully distorted. No, to me,
Yeah.
it looks like an artist who isn't like a master Renaissance painter painted a picture of Trump. Like, I have a portrait of me. Well, my mom has it. My mom has it, and someday it will come to me. My grandma, who is a very talented artist, was a very talented artist, painted a portrait of me. I look at it, and I'm just like, it does not look like me in the slightest. And then other people look at it, and they tell me, oh my God, that's such a good portrait of you. It looks just like you. So, we ourselves are our
Yeah.
harshest critics.
Art is in the eye of the beholder, or whatever. I suppose. I don't know. The thing about it with the reaction to it. So. Yeah, how pissed is Trump? And then also, this was meant to be a nice thing, though, right? It wasn't meant to be an insult to him. So who did this? Who's accountable?
So he, in a Truth Social post, he says, quote, "Nobody likes a bad picture or painting of themselves, but the one in Colorado, in the state capitol, put up by the governor, along with all other presidents, was purposefully distorted to a level that even I, perhaps, have never seen. The artist also did President Obama, and he looks wonderful. But the one of me is truly the worst. She must have lost her talent as she got older. In any event, I would much prefer not having a picture than having this one. But many people from Colorado have called and written to complain.
He has to be misogynistic and ageist within it as well,
Yes.
like, whilst being vain.
Couple things here. The painting was not put up by Colorado Governor Jared Polis. They, in the Capitol in Colorado, have just like a wall of portraits of all of the presidents.
Sure.
And it was actually Republicans who fundraised to have this painting made and put up. The artist, Sarah Boardman, gave several interviews to local outlets in Colorado talking about the process through which she made the painting. The painting isn't off of her imagination. It's based off a photo. She submitted 4 photos to a committee from the Colorado State Capitol that's like bipartisan. It has some Republicans, some Democrats. And the committee of lawmakers chose the photo that she was going to work off of. And in one of the interviews, she said that she chose to portray Trump with a, quote, serious, non-confrontational, thoughtful expression. Because she said she didn't want to make a political statement. She just wanted to put something that kind of aligned with the vibe of all the other portraits and let people make up their mind about how they felt about Trump. But I don't think we can talk about depictions of Donald Trump without talking about the buff Trump phenomenon.
Well, all these sort of AI.
Yes.
Yeah.
We've all seen Donald Trump. We know how corporeal and old he looks. There is a propagandic phenomenon surrounding this president in which artists like Ben Garrison, he himself, portray him as this super ripped, skinny, young, almost superhero-like figure. He likes, even in his campaign photographs and his portraits, he's always like mean mugging the camera and he's trying to depict this image of strength and bullyishness. When he released the line of NFTs, it was a lot of Americana imagery. He was Superman. He was a cowboy. He was an astronaut. And in all of them, he was like skinny and had like the nice jaw.
Yeah.
So I think the other problem here isn't necessarily that the portrait is horrendous and a purposeful distortion of what Trump looks like. I think Trump has given himself body dysmorphia.
Yeah.
Like, I honestly think he doesn't know what he looks like anymore because he's constantly consuming and sharing. Because if you look at his Truth Social feed, it's everywhere. Imagery of himself that portrays him in a manner that isn't true to what he looks like in real life. In real life, his foundation doesn't match and he's bald.
Well, maybe he's going to get really jacked and, I don't know, fight Jake Paul. That's that Jake.
It could
Jake
happen.
Paul's next matchup.
It could happen.
I can see that. I can see that happening. A final one to look at here. Then can we talk about? We haven't talked about her very much, and we'll get into listener questions after this. But Marjorie Taylor Greene.
Boo.
Chris, what's her latest blow up? What's gone on?
She's had a go at Martha Kellner from Sky News. It was very confrontational.
Yeah.
I mean, it's Marjorie Taylor Greene, so what do you expect? But it was around the Signal chat fiasco. Martha Kellner from Sky simply asked Marjorie Taylor Greene what she thought and what happened. And Marjorie Taylor Greene replied with her usual vicious attack lines that she uses when UK journalists or international journalists or any journalist really who doesn't agree exactly with all of her thoughts. She went along with those lines. So when she heard that Martha Kellner was from Sky and a UK reporter, she said, "We don't give a crap about your opinion and your reporting. Why don't you go back to your country where you have a major migrant problem?" And Kellner continued with the line of questioning and asked whether this had put American lives at risk. Greene again replied saying, "Do you care about people from your country? What about all the women that are raped by migrants?"
Okay. So just really...
It's just basically just deflect. It's always deflection, but it's always very angry deflection from Marjorie
She
Taylor
was
Greene.
practically screaming at her. It was really intense.
Yeah.
But then she was also like, no, I'm not taking your question. I'm only going to take questions from Americans.
Exactly.
And the guy she asked was like, no, actually, I want to hear you answer her question.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then asked it directly himself, and still she wouldn't.
Yeah.
She wouldn't answer. Nikki, I mean, why she got mad at Emily Maitlis before? Why do you all hate us Brits? What's the beef?
Guys.
Thanks,
I love
ma'am.
you guys. What are you talking about? I criticize you. Look, you've been cut down to size over the last century and a half. I think Island Nation is the perfect size for you.
Thank you.
You did a lot of empire. It went, good for you, not so great for everyone else. And I think you're where you need to be. You're where you need to be right now, and I love it for you. I love it.
We're quite perfectly formed, sort of like how I would describe my height. We're baby bear's porridge, aren't we? We're just right.
Well, I'm not the same height as you, so I don't know how you've lumped me into that statement. I have no idea.
But I'd say
what does that make me? What porridge am I, Jarv?
You're mama bear's porridge.
What does that mean?
Is that too salty?
That makes sense.
Yeah.
I do have a lot of salt on my desk.
I thought it was too hot.
I don't know.
Well, that
one
also
of them's
makes
too hot,
that
one's
also
too
makes
salty.
incredible sense.
But yeah, Chris,
I am too hot and too salty.
Exactly.
Oh.
Well, I'm just right. On to listener questions. Oh, and these are all baby bear's porridge as well. Let's get into these questions then. Rob asks, just one name, kind of like Prince. With all the dismantling / gutting of government departments, how easy or hard is it for the next president, Democrat or Republican, to put these departments back to working effectively again? Yeah, Nikki, is this destruction forever? Is it permanent?
I mean, in some ways, yes. In other ways, no. I think if you're talking about a 4-year term where government programs are cut, where, institutional knowledge is lost, people are fired, departments are just completely gutted and sitting there sort of stagnant because Republicans can't actually officially get rid of them because they don't have the votes in Congress. The effects on the people who those departments serve, those could be permanent, or they could be incredibly damaging in the long term. So you're not going to be able to undo the potential damage of missed Social Security checks, of children with disabilities having the programs at the schools that are closest to them cut and defunded. You're not going to undo the damage of civil rights offices no longer being able to advocate for the people they need to advocate for. Absences of, support for low-income parents who need daycare for their children. The damage of that in the long term, you can't undo. I think, yes, there are ways to rebuild these departments. There are going to be, I think, presidents who come back or lawmakers who try and reestablish what was. I don't think they'll ever return in the exact same form as they were. And in a lot of ways, if this wasn't what it is, there were reforms that needed to be made in a lot of these departments. I think I talked to Nick Kristof, who's a veteran journalist, about USAID, and he spoke to me about how, there was a lot of bureaucracy, and there were changes that could have been made to the way funding was allocated to programs and ensuring that the money was going to people who actually needed it, not, big nonprofits in the Beltway who were kind of using a lot of the money for themselves. Those reforms could have been made. And I think if a future administration would want to come in and say, okay, we're bringing this back, we're redoing this, we're changing the way we did that thing, that might be good. But again, you're not going to be able to undo the damage that the 4 years we're going to be living through right now will cause. In the conversation with Kristof, where we were talking about USAID, he made the point that, it's not, permanent is a really long time. Forever is a really long time. But in the time in between what we're doing now and when somebody can potentially fix it, we're going to be paying in lives, whether domestically or abroad.
Here's a question from David May. Are there any signs of Republicans standing up for democracy, etc.? I'd have thought things like the Signal chat would be bipartisan, but it seems only Democrats care. Nikki, you mentioned earlier that you think there could be a Republican rebuke here of some kind for Hegseth. Is there much of a pushback, other than, I don't know, Adam Kinzinger is saying that he's pretty pissed off?
I think there was one Republican in the House who said something critical of this, but really not in general.
Yeah.
Elon Musk is pouring a shit ton of money into the Supreme Court race in Wisconsin, which is going to have huge implications for a critical swing state. And we can try and have someone on to discuss it because I think it's a really important topic. He's essentially doing the same playbook he did with the 2024 election. He's offering people money if they signed a petition, holding $1 million raffles, throwing a bunch of money into the race that will decide how districts in Wisconsin, voting districts, are laid out. So that could essentially give Republicans an upper hand in the legislature, the state legislature, if a Republican wins the race. Elon Musk, around the 2024 November election, said that his super PACs are going to be involved in races and leveling primaries. And I think a lot of Republicans right now are really scared to stand up to the actions of the Trump administration. They're being cowards about it because they're facing the risk of being primaried. Because right now, Musk is really strong. He has a ton of money. He's in the good graces of the administration. And if they criticize Doge, if they criticize immigration actions, if they criticize something like the Signal chat, they are opening the door to someone saying, you're not MAGA enough. We're going to fund a primary challenge against you, and them losing their seat. And again, like I said earlier, people in power never give up that power willingly.
Finally, then, we've got a silly question here. Thank you, Wayne the Wanderer on Blue Sky. Where's he wandering right now?
Where's he going?
Hope you're having a nice wander whilst you listen to this podcast, Wayne. A question for the three of you. When American Friction is made into a major movie, as it surely will be, who do you want to play you, and who do you think will play you? Chris, I'm going to go for you first.
Well, I've been told more than once, so it's not a coincidence, that I resemble slightly James McAvoy.
Okay.
Bit of a B-Tech James McAvoy. That'll mean nothing to Nikki.
No.
But still. So
like
I would,
Costco James McAvoy.
Yeah. I would like either him or Jason Statham, purely because he's bold. But frankly, let's face it, the budget's going to be low for this. So it's going to end up being someone like Phil Mitchell. Steve McFadden from EastEnders.
Go on, you can go Ross Kemp. You can get Grant.
It's just his brother.
You can do. Well, they're not brothers in real life though.
What? Nikki has no idea
is
right
so
now.
over Nikki's head.
We've got into British soap chat here.
Nikki, who do you want to play you, and who do you think will play you?
So the only celebrity I've ever been told I look like, I always forget her name, is the blonde chick from Children of the Corn.
I'm not sure.
So
the old Children of the OG or the
the OG one. So I think I don't know how old she is now, but some version of that would end up playing me.
Okay.
Who do I want to play me? Adam Driver in a wig.
Yeah, nice.
Adam Driver in a wig.
Yeah, that's solid.
That's pretty good actually. I like that.
Yeah.
I was thinking of who I'd like to play me, and I thought Adam Driver could be kind of cool, not in a wig. Jake Gyllenhaal would be cool, but then I thought I'm going to go left field of it. Nicolas Cage, I'd want to play me.
Ooh, are we stealing the Constitution?
So hang on, is he playing you like an older version of you, or is he how he is but playing a young person? Because he would do that,
like Face Off style. He's just being me. So I like that. But then, who I actually think there is an Irish actor whose name I forget that my friend says I look like, and it's one of the only times I've been like, I do look like that guy. So if I remember that Wayne the Wanderer, I'll remember it and let you know.
Producer Simon. Who does Producer Simon want to play him? Because he's going to be in the film, surely.
Yeah, Simon.
Well, I was going to say Jason Statham as well, but since you've had Jason Statham, I'll go with Larry David.
That would be cool.
He's got that whole thing about just all bald people looking the same.
Well, because that was what I was going to say. If we're going without timeline, I think who would play me would be Jason Alexander, George from Seinfeld.
Oh, nice.
Just because, you know, he kind of got a similar sort of normcore dress sense, and he can be cool and fun occasionally, but normally he just gets thwarted and he's very upset and a little bit pent up, and I can be a little bit uptight like that. So I think that'd be, you know. Can
you? I had no idea.
Yeah. Right, that's it. The end of the show. That brings us.
Show over.
That brings us to the end of this episode of American Friction. I don't even need the script to do this bit anymore.
Wow, you're so clever.
I would play myself because I'm quite the actor. Nikki, thank you very much.
Thank you both. It's always my favorite time of the week.
Simon, thank you very much.
Well, thank you so much.
Simon, line quickly for me. Who do I need to?
I think you need to thank someone.
Chris, Thank you very much. Sorry, I was off script there a little bit. I'm method acting. And all of you, thank you very much. I think you would all be played by a raucous crowd from World Cup '98. I think that is who would play our listeners in the biopic that we've got. But look, if you want us to keep going with the show, as I've mentioned already, what we would really appreciate is if you could consider supporting us on Patreon. From some of our higher tiers, from £5 a month, you can speak to us directly on our community chat. That's where some of those questions were from. And you'll get bonus content as well. But every tier gets you the show ad-free. And it helps us keep going. And it makes us feel very happy. So thanks to all of you who do support us there. And everyone else, go to patreon.com/American Friction to sign up. There is a link in the show notes. And if you can't do that, we understand that not everyone can back us financially. But if you could go and make sure you rate and review us wherever you're listening to the show, and make sure you subscribe as well, because all of that really does help us. I'm Jacob Jarvis, as played by Adam Driver, and thank you very much. This has been American Friction.
What the fuck?